There you are, thief in the shadows.
Hello there, and welcome to Talking Smack, episode 2 of the Hobbit Trilogy, The Desolation of Smaug. I'm your host, Josh Scar, and joining me, as always, is my co host, Alex. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm invigorated by the music. And not to dive into spoilers too soon, but did you know that this episode has spiders in it?
Yeah, so
Oh, wow.
arachnophobia warning for anyone who has a fear of spiders
Mm-hmm.
going into this episode. One of the few things from the book that I think they actually did fairly well in this movie. But Alex, I mean, let's get into like, how are you doing? How are you feeling this week going into this rewatch of The Desolation of Smaug?
You know, I actually am rather content because after our rewatch of the first one and being able to sit on it for a little while in our conversation, I realized I had judged the movie too harshly when it came out by going, "Man, I'm not going to go see this. Man, how dare you?" And then, watching years later, when I watched them all just straight, I was very much, I was so justified, and now I've just wasted 9 hours of my life. But taking a step back, watching the extended version of the first one and then into the second one, I was tentatively excited to go. You know what? I'm ready to be proven wrong. What about you?
I was kind of interested to see where I was going to be on this one too, because yeah, I walked away fairly positive from An Unexpected Journey. Like I said when we were talking about it, it's one of those movies that I had convinced myself that after we hear the Misty Mountains song sung by the dwarves, it's all downhill from there. And I didn't walk away hating myself for having sat through nearly 3 hours of that movie.
Yeah.
This movie, I'm not gonna lie, it's been a little while since I watched it. I thought we had a schedule that we weren't able to stick to that schedule. It's been a little longer than a week since I've seen this, and I legitimately don't remember anything from this movie or most anything from this movie. Like I've been racking my brain for the better part of the last day, trying to be like, it starts with, it starts in the spiders. No, the spiders are a little later because we have to do what did we have to do before then? What was the fetch quest before that? Um, and for the life of me, I could not remember like the opening of this movie, but we'll dive into it a little bit more here after we hear from Antonio over at the Cultworthy, and we'll also talk about where we were when we saw this movie for the first time, like we did last time. I think that's a good frame of reference to go
Oh yeah,
into with like
definitely.
where we went into it initially, where we're at now. I like that conversation. So let's go hear from Antonio over at the Cultworthy real quick, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Desolation of Smaug, The Hobbit Part 2.
The Cultworthy Podcast. Join me, Antonio Palacios, each week as I guide you through a never ending sea of obscure cinema and cult-worthy gems that deserve a rediscovery. Find me on all listening platforms and at thecultworthy.com. The Cultworthy Podcast. Join us.
So we are 11 years removed from the debut of The Desolation of Smaug, the highly anticipated sequel to An Unexpected Journey, because we were finally going to get the dragon. We were finally going to see Smaug the dragon, one of the most infamous dragons in all of fantasy epics. And I mean, in that sense, I don't think the movie disappoints, especially when you see the behind the scenes footage of Benedict Cumberbatch doing some extreme yoga and motion capture all at the same time. But let's go back in time to 2013, and Alex, where were you in your life's journey getting ready for The Desolation of Smaug? I know you said you kind of abstained from these movies when they were in
Yeah.
theaters, but like let's just talk about like when you saw this was like, oh, it's in theaters. What was your meh? What was your reason to keep away from it?
I just let's see. So I had just started becoming a homeowner, which was a huge win after several years at the company that I was working at, and I was very much of the mindset that the Lord of the Rings came out during the foundational period of my life where I was still a teenager and they were perfect and they were epic and it was great. And then now I'm in like my late 20s and they're bringing these things back and I'm like, he's like, no, you do not put the lightning back in the bottle. You can't put the lightning back in the bottle. Look at Airplane 2. Look at, well, we have so many Legoquels now that have come out that I was like trying to put lightning back in the bottle. I was like, look at the Phantom Menace and he's like the first one too long and childish and you got rid of Del Toro. How dare you get rid of Del Toro? I love Del Toro. Bring me Hellboy 2. Bring me more Hellboy 2, So I just didn't feel it. I just didn't feel it and I didn't want to. And then of course, being a fanboy on the internet at any period in time, you can find a group of people who are willing to crap on anything just to prove your point. And I was like, yes, these are my people. That's where I was.
Finding that echo chamber is very easy.
Oh, it's great. Sometimes you can find it just by walking into your bathroom and just talking to yourself.
That's where most echo chambers start, actually, I think. Ricky and I had actually just moved in together. We had just gotten engaged as well. So like we were flying high. We were in the honeymoon phases of our relationship. And I was still very excited for this movie because, in Peter Jackson we trust, we would hope that the somewhat disappointing end and like the CGI fest that is An Unexpected Journey, maybe the dragon will kind of save it and everything. Like we had the great scene with Riddles in the Dark. Now we're gonna have Thief in the Shadows, and it's just gonna blow us away. And it's so padded, and it doesn't leave you with a sense of anything. Like it doesn't even Empire Strikes Back because I mean, jumping ahead a little bit, it's very clear that they intended for the entire Smaug sequence to be in this movie. And then they went, crap, we don't have enough for the last movie. We need to just like do this action sequence and then we'll start the next one with an action sequence. That doesn't make sense, but that's what we're going to have to do. And you can feel it by the end of this movie because the sequence at the end after the Thief in the Shadows stuff is so padded and it's so long.
Yeah.
But I will say on this rewatch, there are some things that I walked away from being like, I remember hating that. That's actually pretty fun. So let's really get into it because I I did not cheat. I remembered eventually that they start off with the chase to get to Beorn's house, which is like the most pointless piece of sequence in this entire movie. I know they pay it off later in the second movie for just like it wasn't useless, we promise. But it's so fucking useless. Like the sequence at Beorn's house is just more of what I was talking about previously, where Gandalf makes a plan and then he has to adjust that plan, and he's like, "Fuck, I don't know how I'm getting us out of this," and then he just gets lucky.
That sequence brought me back a little bit of good feelings, a little bit of goodwill for this movie because it reminded me of like, oh yeah, this is supposed to be a kids movie because the whole like the very tall, I believe he's a skin changer, I think is what they call him or something, anamorphous or whatever if you want to use other terms, but the whole like, well, I hate dwarves. You're not a dwarf, of course not. Well, I hated them all. And it's like, well, we have a few dwarves who are with us, and like two come out. A few is not two. And then some more. Are you sure that that? I was like, oh yeah, this is cute. I like this.
It is a cheeky bit of dialogue, yeah.
Yeah, and it is a little bit of Tom Bombadil-ish, where
Mhm.
I'm like, man, they're keeping this, but they got rid of Tom from Lord of the Rings. How dare you guys? I want to hear Tom sing his dopey song, But then the movie to me starts with a tonal whiplash where Peter Jackson loses the ability to remind himself while filming that this is a kids movie, because he goes like, oh man, okay, we have a spider sequence coming up. We have to make it even worse than Lord of the Rings. We have to go hardcore into this. And then somewhere in the back of his mind is like, we should probably explain where Sting got his name. Let's toss that into there.
Well,
We gotta
I'm
add it.
pretty sure that is in the book.
Is it in the book?
I'm
'Cause
pretty sure it's in the book because
okay,
that entire sequence with the spiders is
yeah,
pretty much it's taken pretty much straight from the book. He
yeah.
puts on the ring, he's able to understand the spiders, and I do believe that is from the book.
Okay, well, I take that back then. I honestly haven't read The Hobbit since I was maybe like 14. Maybe I might have read it after I actually read Lord of the Rings. So maybe it was more like 17.
I
But it's
know
been a
for me it's
long
been 10
time.
years, so
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a haze for me to try and remember what is
Yeah.
directly from the book and what isn't. Like again, going a little bit ahead, I know for a fact that like Bilbo's knocked out pretty early on in the Battle of the Five Armies,
Mm-hmm.
and so they have to take some pretty big liberties with that.
Yeah. But then we get Toriel and Legolas. And that scene as well, to me, was just very much like, oh, remember when the elves got the drop on them in the Lord of the Rings? Now we get to see them fight some stuff and get a drop on it. It felt just kind of this weird starting to reference itself, as George Lucas would say, it's like poetry, it rhymes. But
Yeah,
I will
it's
say, on
not good.
rewatch, the love triangle is not nearly as offensive as I remember it being. I remember like kicking up my like watching it. Like I said, I didn't watch it until somewhere in the pandemic, probably 2021 or so. They were just all on TBS or TNT or something like that, and just airing straight. So we watched them all. And I remember going like, "Why is there like half this movie about this?" It's like 3 scenes. They're long
It
scenes.
is.
They're very long scenes.
It is, and they are. I do have to say and point out, it's great that they went. We need women in this movie. Like that's fantastic that they recognize that this is a very dong heavy movie, but to then insert, no pun intended, to then insert a female character, a strong female character, and her entire motivation is to be an object of someone's affection, an unrequited lover, and then to also immediately fall in love with someone else is pretty fucking offensive.
Wait. You're saying that in a dong heavy movie to make the entire agency of the strong female character deciding which dong she likes better is a bad thing?
A little bit,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. That's another thing that that rewatching this, like the whole like is she in love with Legolas thing is so one-sided. It's like
Yeah, she's
it
absolutely not in love with Legolas, but Legolas is smitten with her. And they just inserted her to make him to give him reason to no longer go back to Fangorn Forest or what forest? Lothlorien.
yeah. But even then, it's like they don't really put that onus on Legolas. They have Legolas's dad who's just like, Lee Pace.
Oh, I have things to say about Legolas's dad for the next movie. I remember one very distinct thing with him, and it happens in the next movie.
But even then, it's not. You don't really have like scenes of like Legolas and her like pining. Really, it's more like his dad's like, he isn't sure he's in love with an elf like you. It's so weirdly one sided. It's like they didn't give Orlando Bloom like the pages saying, by the way, you're in love with this woman.
Yeah, he's too busy being racist against the dwarves.
Yeah,
I
it's
will say I did actually enjoy brooding Legolas or like dark Legolas, however you want to term this, like where he is very much just like, oh, these dwarves, I'm gonna kick their asses. Like he's just very like alpha male, aggro, whatever term you want to use. Like he's overly aggressive and just ready to kick someone's ass. He
oh
hasn't like
yeah,
quite softened around the edges yet.
oh yeah.
I actually thought Orlando Bloom did a pretty good job with what it is, and I actually did not hate his performance and what he was doing with the role. It's more just how they just overtly insert him into this movie, and again, his main onus is I'm in love with this peasant elf woman who is in my home and pretty much seems to be the only other female in my home, therefore I'm in love with her. My dad doesn't want me to be in love with her. My dad also doesn't show me love, but my mom died tragically. So I have daddy issues and mommy issues, and Tauriel's going to fix those for me. but I also hate dwarves, and that is my leading motivation.
Yeah, when they were in the jail, I really expected him to like come in with like the police baton kind of thing and like rough them up. I was like, when is Tariel
We need
gonna
Clancy
stop?
Brown in here now.
Yeah, when is Tariel gonna like stop hitting on the one quote unquote conventionally attractive dwarf so Legolas can get in there and start beating some of them?
And I do have to apologize really quick. I gave a listen back to our previous episode. I mistakenly called Keely Feely, I believe several times. Keely is the attractive one. Feely is the blonde one who is just not quite as conventionally attractive. He's the quiet brother that's just there to be like, oh, they're going to be Merry and Pippin, but they're not.
You are forgiven this one time.
I appreciate it. I didn't name all of them, so I have that going for me.
But then after, Legolas is a complete jerk and we get the love story set up, it's unforgivable, especially extended, man. That barrel sequence goes on forever.
It does go on for two.
I really enjoyed it at first. It's like, oh, this is kind of clever. This is fun. The burglar is burglarizing.
We do need to rewind a little bit because yes,
Yeah.
the escape / heist sequence for Bilbo is really good, but we do have to touch on Azog just getting completely thrown to the wayside and calling out Bolg, who is somehow even worse of an orc design. He has like armor plating like slashed into his skin, and again, just completely CGI, blind in one eye, weird like bulldog bottom underbite lip thing going on. Somehow less personality than Azog. And again, just like not there, just clearly CGI in this 48 frames per second, 4K piece of dog shit presentation of this movie. It just there's no iconic villain in these movies, and they're like trying so hard to make something iconic for these movies, which I'll take that back. Okay, we have Smaug. Like Smaug is iconic, but to just completely go Azog's probably not going to work here, especially because we need to save him as the final boss for these movies. We need a mini boss. Let's create Bolg, or let's go through the appendices and go through Azog's family tree and find Bolg. And just it is not the Nazgul, to put it lightly.
No, no, it's not. And what bothers me even more about it is how in frame all these not real orcs are. Um, when you compare Legolas killing, yes, it's in the next movie, but when Legolas is killing a bunch of the orcs in the next movie, compared to Lord of the Rings, the end of the end of the Two Towers. No, wait, the end of the Fellowship, where they're getting overrun and Sean Bean dies. Those are real people in real suits running at him, and he's firing. I think stunt arrows, or maybe they're filling in arrows. But when he's like doing his tricks and then like stabbing the orcs with them, and they're falling down, that looks real, feels real, is real. This is very much, especially when they put that weird gloss over him because he's 10 years older, so he's not like 21; he's in his early 30s. They put that weird gloss on his face to try to de-age him to make his eyes pop and stuff. It just is very apparent that nothing is quite real here in this moment. So I'm just watching like a really cool animated trick shot video, to which I go,
Yeah.
"Good on Weta. You've successfully made a animated cutscene. I would like to go back to playing Grand Theft Auto 4 now. Thank you."
There was a moment, I either it's a night scene or it's shortly after the barrel scene ends, where Legolas's eyes are like aglow. I don't know how else to say it. They're just weirdly very brightly blue. And I'm like, I remember them being like blue, and they're like making a big deal about his elf eyes. I don't remember them being that bright, like ever, even in this movie. Like, what the hell just happened? And I think they're showing off him using his elf sight, uh, literally just showing it off because it's not something they've shown us before. They just said, "Hey, he has special long distance eyesight as an elf. Trust us, he can see very far." And now all of a sudden, he's just got these like I I don't even know how to like contact blue, but also neon blue, like a glow eyes that are looking beyond the river and whatnot. Like, what is happening?
It's almost like the super creepy guy from Ghostbusters 2 where he's in the hallway after bothering Dana and the eyes just suddenly start glowing like flashlights.
Mm.
It's that kind of like
Mhm.
weird randomness where it's like this never comes back, but it's in that moment you're like, huh. It's kind of like, it's also like that first time when you're watching again in the Fellowship where they're trying to go through the mountain pass and like they're digging through the snow and they have like one side, like one full frame shot of everybody, and Legolas is the only person walking on top of
You
the
see his
snow.
feet walking on the camera, and then yeah, that's
Yeah,
a fantastic shot, and there's
it
no
is.
explanation needed because it's like, oh, he's an elf, of course. He's
No,
graceful and he's light on his feet.
yeah, exactly. And apparently, hobbits are very, very dense. They just sink right in.
So let's get back into the barrel scene because I do remember also being like, "Holy fuck, this is taking forever." And I also remember hating the bomber sequence where he like actually does something that's not him being a hindrance because he's oversized. When his arms popped out of that barrel and he just did a big spin move with his axes, I had fun with that moment. Like I got a little, I had a
Yeah,
little joy come out of it. I was just okay. No, you got me with that one, Peter Jackson. 11 years later, I'm on board with this actually. I like it.
yeah. I mean, that little stuff is cute and fun, and again, strikes that whole this is a child's story fable. And I'm not like putting it down. Like it doesn't need to be like Peter Rabbit or something like that. It's a thick book, but it's meant as like a children's fable for people, under 13ish.
Yeah, it's all ages. Yeah, it's something that anyone should be able to enjoy.
Yeah, it's just it goes on too long, and then when it goes into the super serious parts, like when that one dwarf is stabbed and is just on the table screaming for like off and on for an hour, I'm like, dear Lord, someone please help him. Like when Frodo got stabbed, that was like 3-4 minutes, and we had sexy time during that because uh, Strider goes out looking for stuff, and then he gets a blade to his neck, and we find out he has an elfy girl that he kind of likes. That not often. What is it? Not often that Strider is snuck up on him by
A
an elf
ranger
or something.
lost with, or a
Yes,
ranger
yes,
caught off his guard. Yeah.
yeah. And then we're like, oh, okay, these two have a history. Let's go on. You know?
So I do have it in my notes as well. We need to backtrack a little bit because your boy Lee Pace is in this movie.
God bless Lee Pace.
He got lost apparently by about 10 years. He ended up in the wrong movie 10 years later because based on the effects that they put on him, he belongs in Barbossa's crew from the Pirates of the Caribbean Curse of the Black Pearl. He got cursed by Cortez's cursed treasure. Because speaking of things that never come back, Thranduil, Legolas's dad, apparently got like two-faced or something like Harvey Dent did in The Dark Knight because he was having a negotiation with Thorin and revealed that he went into the moonlight and his face just kind of peeled away and he just kind of looked a little face-ish, but I guess he's got like some kind of magic balm or magic spell maybe that makes him still stay beautiful, and that's basically his character.
I have never understood that part because I was hoping they would say like, "Oh yes, the magic of the elves allows me to project this," or maybe if he's like with other elves, they can see he's cursed or something, and he's only presenting for others. But yeah, it's like one brief like, "Look how not quite ugly I am, but I am, but I am not, but I am, but I'm not." And then yeah, they never mention it again. It's just like, okay, I'm back to hating anyone who is not good enough for my son.
Yeah, his entire character arc is I want those jewels back that we showed in the prologue of the first movie. I have a scar and I despise dwarves because I'm scarred for some reason. And Legolas can't marry a commoner because apparently elves have a caste system, or at least the elves of Lothlorien do.
Yeah, which again is just another thing that they're just kind of like already went through with Lord of the Rings, where it's like you can't love a human. He's going to die, and then you'll be alive forever,
And like that
sad,
makes
mourning
sense.
for 1,000 years. Yes, that makes
That
sense.
makes sense because yeah, you don't want to be mourning for 1,000 years. That's horrible. Like
Yeah.
that's a fate worse than death, because I mean, at least with death you have nothing, whereas living for 1,000 years after your at least long lived partner, since he's a Dunedain, he might live to like 200. You still have 800 more years to go where he's just not around. And
Do you?
like, at least with another elf, despite the fact that she's a commoner, or maybe it's because she's ginger, is that the problem?
That might be it. Because I now have a head canon that I have to think about it. So Legolas
But
isn't
she
good enough for
clearly
her.
dyes it because you see the roots. Although they are woodland elves, so maybe the roots are just natural.
Those are great questions that I hope they address on the Rings of Power.
Hey, they brought back Tom Bombadil, maybe.
I don't know. But I have a headcanon now. Legolas isn't good enough for her. It's too good for her. Killy is way below her station. Maybe he just wants her for himself. Nah, I don't think so. That's not gonna work.
I mean, we all know he ends up becoming hetero life mates with Gimli anyway, so it's fine. He gets a little bit more time with a dwarf, I think, than a human. So you had mentioned it earlier that this movie tries to create parallels, or at least make you get the feels for certain moments from the Lord of the Rings movies, which are cheap gimmicks. No greater offender of this than pretty much all of Lake Town. Um, they drag poor Stephen Fry into this as the master of Lake Town. I forget. I think it's like Robert Cage or Richard Cage or something like that plays Alfred Unibrow Limp Dick or whatever his name is.
Yup.
They try to get some Grima Wormtongue, as well as Boromir and Faramir's father. I'm forgetting his name at the moment. They're trying really hard to create some parallels here and just be like, you liked it from this one, but they don't quite fill those roles in this movie, because again, we're confused as to whether or not this is like a children's tale or not. And this is where, for me, in this movie, in this rewatch, that what you had said previously in the last one, where the Hobbit is an all ages kids story, an all ages story, that they just failed to properly adapt, and they tried to do too much to like give you the Lord of the Rings feels while also trying to keep like that kid friendliness of the story and that like jovialness. And this is like, again, like I said, the worst offender of any of those sort of things they were trying to do, because those characters do not belong in this movie. They don't belong in this world that they've created, even with like the mishmash of going a little too bombastic and like Pirates of the Caribbean and Jack Sparrow-ish with some of the antics with the escape routes and stuff, and the physics that they play with. But also, like these characters belong in like Paddington or the Harry Potter movies. They don't belong in these movies, at least not in the way that they're presented.
No, I agree. That's just the entire sequence is just fairly useless. I even forgot that Stephen Fry was in this, and I'm looking at it going like, oh yeah, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's the worm tongue, and okay, we get some. I do enjoy that we get a little bit of color in Lake Town. We're seeing the flavors of life, even though it's just depressing. It's like, oh, hey, there's people and families and things are happening, and there's people living here, and blah blah blah. But it is just a means to an end, because they're just passing on through to get to the big boy, our lovely Smaug. That's all they're doing. They're just setting up. To me, they're just setting up a lot of casualties for Smaug.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also a setup for Thorin too, because they have to get to him becoming worse, I guess. I still don't find him at all appealing as a hero or a protagonist in this movie, which I mean, he's still not necessarily a protagonist. Bilbo is our protagonist, Gandalf is a protagonist, but Thorin is just kind of there. He is the means to the end for the reason for the quest.
Yeah.
They don't put in the effort to make him likable beyond the fact
Mm-mm.
that he is just with the company, and Bilbo is like, I like you guys. You guys are making me a better person. Therefore, you must be good people too, I guess. And it it's still, I never connected with Thorin through this movie, where I was just like, yeah, this guy, I'm gonna feel things once the things happen in the next movie. In this movie, I'm still just like, you suck. Like that, plain and simple. I know, I remember vaguely what's coming ahead, but even with you saying these things, it all comes across as hollow no matter what, because you've been so desperate to just get back into the mountain and reclaim your home, that you're willing to do and say anything except treat with elves. Even then though, like, you're willing to accept a little bit of their help because he had Elrond read the map for them in the previous movie.
Right. And I'm going to be honest. I thought that Thorin and Bard the Bowman were the same character until this most recent watching.
Dude, when they released the trailers for this movie, I legitimately thought Orlando Bloom was pulling double duty, because Luke Evans looks like Orlando Bloom in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
I know, right?
And we never got a really good shot at him in the trailers. And this is before I realized that I could just IMDb things before they came out. So I didn't know Luke Evans was in this movie. I just was like, Orlando Bloom is doing dual roles, or is like his Legolas in disguise? What is happening here? That they have this person who looks like Orlando Bloom in Pirates of the Caribbean. Maybe it is Orlando Bloom trying to look like he's from Pirates of the Caribbean while also being Legolas. Like, what is happening here? And then lo and behold, I find out it's Gaston, but we'll come to that later.
The part that does get to me a little bit is they get up there to try to figure out the back door into the mountain, and they all give up. And then you have Bilbo kind of like figure out the riddle. I'm very happy about that, because it again shows him that he's good at riddles. When he loses the damn key because it slips off of, like, he's in his excitement, and it starts to tumble, the foot coming down to catch it from Thorn and all the rest of the dwarves there. I know it's like impossible. How the hell did 55 dwarfs sneak up on him when they were miles below already? And he even like looks down and they're like, can't see them. They're all gone. And he just walks over and they're all back. That does get me a little bit every time. It's like, yeah, it's like kind of like the whole like, oh, yeah, we heard you, buddy. We trust in you. Let's just give this one more go.
Yeah, it is a nice moment. I do think that dropping the key and having them make the triumphant return is a little extra. I don't know how you
it's
really
cute.
I don't know how you fix it to make it a little bit better. Maybe we can task the I Have Some Notes guys to do an episode on the Hobbit trilogy, and they can just kind of fix it and turn it into 2 movies. If they haven't already, they've got a lot of episodes out. Maybe that's something they've done. But overall, the sequence of getting into the mountain, call back to Lord of the Rings stuff where they're trying to figure out speak, friend, and enter. It's a little tiring at how long it takes them, because we know the dragon is coming. We know these things are coming, and they're just padding for time, trying to build anticipation while also making us feel like we've seen this before and filling us with nostalgia, because we know we have to get to the thief in the shadows, but we have to solve this riddle first. And dwarves love their riddles, which is great. That's fine. It's a good security key, I guess. Maybe we should figure out how to use that against AI. But overall, I that scene just always felt so padded and long to me, just like the barrels. It just doesn't work in the way that I think they want it to, especially again where it feels very much like something out of a kids movie, where they're just building anticipation and padding for time through one minor conflict and building mountains out of molehills, no pun intended, where they're sitting on a mountain trying to figure out this riddle to get into the mountain.
But I think that it pays off once we're in the mountain, because once we start seeing everything, and once Smaug rises up, that is all fantastic. The first, I don't know, 7-8 minutes of that interaction before hijinks ensue is great.
Mm-hmm.
It is wonderful. Just the way Smaug, the the motion capture they had, as you said, with Benedict Cumberbatch deciding to do yoga while in mocap, and the way they get the dragon moving and Bilbo's reluctance and fear, and then putting on the ring, but he can still like smell him and feel his coins being manipulated and knows where, and calling him the thief in the shadow. It's so good. That it's so good until hijinks. That's when it falls apart. But it's
Mhm.
so fun.
Yeah, I have to call out my best boy Bofer when he's giving Bilbo his pep talk, and he's just kind of like, "Oh, if you have to worry about Dragonfire," but again, he reiterates like he did in the first movie, just a quick second of unimaginable searing pain, and then you're dead. It's fine.
I did like that.
I think Dwalin, the older dwarf, is like giving him a little pep talk too. Just trying to let him know, like he's like, how will I know the Arkenstone? He's like, oh, you'll know it when you see it. Like it is the only thing that is not gold in that mountain
Yeah.
of gold.
Yeah.
Bilbo, Martin Freeman again knocks his
Mhm.
parts out of the park with what
Yep.
he's doing. I mean, he's acting against nothing. I don't even think they had Benedict Cumberbatch audio or anything in there, but they just crushed it, and
Oh
they
yeah.
built up. This is where I'm okay with the padding, where they have him like running around hiding, Scrooge McDucking through the money, finding little pivots here and there where maybe Smaug's a little too big and he's not going to damage his gold.
Oh yeah.
Like all of that is just so well done and so good. And then we get to the point where the dwarves decide they're going to go in and take on Smaug, and that's when this whole thing falls apart, because
Yep.
the the whole sequence relies on Smaug just deciding he can't breathe fire every now and again, and
Mm.
just being a complete idiot, which we spent the entire Thief in the Shadow sequence setting up. He's very intelligent, so you're just completely undercutting any threat you've made of him other than the fact that he can breathe fire, because we need these dwarves to survive.
I did like the use of trying to get him Smaug to relight the forges. I did like the idea of that plan. I would be making a liar of myself if I said I didn't enjoy the gag with, I believe it was Thorin landing on top of Smaug's snout when he's dangling in the pit, and then Smaug like kind of stuck there like, what's going on? And then so he like slowly just starts opening his mouth like, okay, I don't want him to fall, but I want him to tip into my mouth.
That's what she said.
But I really did like it. And then of course, the whole big contraption has been falling forever and finally hits Smaug, and I did like that stuff.
I think there is clever stuff within the chase sequence and the hijinks. It just goes on for too long.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, the opening sequence of the Battle of the Five Armies, where Smaug is taking out Lake Town, that sequence can't be longer than 20 minutes if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And it you can tell again that they had that sequence finished and they had it for this movie, because there's a clear like ending point, but they went, oh no, we don't have enough to break up the first two parts of this film until we get to the hour-long war sequence. Let's just add that into the front end of this and like start off on a high note.
Yeah. Which is kind of weird, but we'll get to that. I'm not particularly happy either with the way they decided to cut it, because Smaug is freed because, of course, burying a dragon that lives on gold in gold isn't going to work. But the seeing the dragon fly off to Lake Town and Bilbo's "What have we done?" like that to me is
What have we done?
Thank you.
I had that saved. I was going to make that a bit throughout the entire thing. But I ended up enjoying the first movie too much, where I was like, I can't make this a good bit in good faith. So I'll just have it as a sound bit somewhere.
Yeah, it doesn't work, because the first movie, if you're trying to go for like kind of like downer ending leading to a third triumph thing, if you're looking at the Lord of the Rings, the first one is kind of a downer ending, but at the same time it's not, because
It's hopeful.
they're hopeful. They're off on they're heading into the thing. Strider and Legolas, they're going to go and try to recover Merry and Pippin. It's hopeful. They're going to strike. The Two Towers. It ends in this big brutal fight, but they're hopeful because let's we've defeated this military. This military. There's still work to be done. Let's get going. This one is just very much okay. This is going to really, really suck for everybody in that town in about a year when this next movie comes out.
Yeah. I think it ends with Smaug going, I am fire, I am death, whatever. I don't remember. It could be either way, where it goes Bilbo going, what have we done? And then cuts to Smaug, I am whatever, I am fire, I am death. Or it's the other way around, where Smaug does that and then Bilbo goes, what have we done? And then it cuts to black. Either way, like I think it's not the worst ending they could have done by padding what they did, but it's also not the best way to end the movie because you're giving the middle finger to your audience. It's sort of like Fast X, where they blow up a dam and now was it Vin Diesel or John Cena was like running for their lives from the dam bursting. Like, you don't end in the middle of an action sequence and just go, come back next year, bet you'll enjoy yourself. No. Like,
No.
as maligned as the Matrix Reloaded is, when you see Neo head to head with that Smith infected human, you're like, oh fuck, shit's
Yeah.
about to get real. And then
Mhm.
they cut to black. Like, that's a cliffhanger. That's a tease. Smaug leaving and doing his thing, like, that's not a tease. That's just you being like, that's it.
Yep. It's a bummer, and to me, it sets up everything that goes tragically wrong with the third one.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. So I think that's a good place to end it, since that's where the movie ended as well. I don't remember if we did a must see or pass for the last episode now.
We did.
We did. Oh yeah, we did, because yeah, surprisingly I said it was a must see. Yeah, I can't say this is a must see. I think you can look up the scene where you can look up the Thief in the Shadows scene, and you're pretty much set. Like, that's the only thing you need to see out of this movie, I think. How about you?
Well, you've ruined it, because I was going to say, in this age of streaming, just pull up Max and just fast forward until you see a dragon and then play. It's about 2:10. Oh, that reminds me. So this is a really old deep cut, but I believe it's an episode of Friends, which is what I was thinking of when I was watching this, and I was waiting to get to Smog. I'm like, is Smog like an hour and a half? No, it's 2:10 ish before he appears on screen. There's an episode of Friends, or I believe it's
They pad it out very
Yeah.
very much.
where I believe it's Phoebe and Rachel who are watching TV, and they're like fast forwarding, and one of them says, "Man, there's a lot of Braveheart before you get to see Mel Gibson's butt." And that's all I could think of. It just popped in my head. I'm like, why is that in a kernel in my head from 30 years ago?
As everyone should know at this point, I like making fun little intro and outro sound clips. Usually I just take the bit from a movie that we watched or that's related to what we watched, and I try to like give us a little fun bit at the end. Please be sure to listen through to the very end of this one, because I'm very proud of myself for what I did. You'll understand it when you hear it. But Alex, let's get out of here. We've got a Battle of the Five Armies to watch and record in not too long a time. So let everyone know about our Discord, please.
Our Discord is where you can find us. We hang out. We enjoy it. There's a link right there at the bottom. Just join our server. Talk shit to us. Let us know how right and wrong we are. And if we're wrong, just be sure to @ Matt, because he'll defend us to the death.
Yeah, definitely. And don't forget to follow us on all the social media platforms, including Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, Hive Social, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Email us your thoughts, questions, reviews, comments, concerns, whatever you have. Email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com. Thank you to Leo Allen for our musical themes that you're hearing right now. Beppo for our original avatars, Retrorail Studios for our Ricky avatar. Please like, subscribe, rate, review on your podcatcher of choice. Oh, hey, I didn't say it on top either. Happy holidays, everyone. We will be back in just a couple of days with the end of this week-long trilogy that we're doing for ourselves, the Battle of the Five Armies. So please like, comment, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And most importantly, Alex, thank you for being here. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. Again, happy holidays. We will see you in just a couple of days. I should say, my catchphrase at the end is always, take care.
Take care.
And watch Star Trek.
What have we here? It's a sparkly, shiny... Wait a minute. Oh, it's a human. What are you doing down here in the realm of the month?
I did not come to steal from you. Oh, Smaug, the unaccessibly wealthy.
I merely wanted to gaze upon your magnificence, to see if you really were as great as the old tales say.
I did not believe them.
Are you just trying to get me to talk about myself? Because if you are, I will gladly do so. Huh? In song form.